Mr. Modi, do you deserve the trust of our...
The only thing I can say is that if there's a hearing problem, that I can't account for, but that I don't know of, you know? And I think Prime Minister Modi, if you didn't hear me, he can come out and say it. But I don't think he'll do that either.
Prime Minister Modi, why don't you take some questions from the freest press in the world?
That's not a big room, and I have a loud voice, so those two things, and everyone else was quiet.
Prime Minister Modi, why don't you take some questions from the freest press in the world?
Would you want to give that benefit of doubt to Prime Minister Modi?
No, because then he can just say it, you know? And I know he saw me because we had eye contact when I also tried to approach him in the elevator. So, and I'm pretty sure he heard me because I have a really loud voice.
So you're saying that you did have an eye contact with Prime Minister Modi?
Yeah, and when he was standing in the elevator. So I know that he acknowledged, well, he didn't acknowledge it in his words, but I know that he knew that something was up. And I'm pretty sure he heard me. To me, it's kind of a wild question because if you were there...
No, but when you were in the elevator, you said that you had an eye contact with Prime Minister Modi in the elevator. Yes. At that time, you didn't shoot a question to him?
I tried to ask him a new question too, yeah, about trust. If you see that clip, you see... But the door is closed.
The elevator closes.
Yeah. The people that have access to Modi won't ask those type of questions. I don't know if they even can, and without fearing for their safety. Fall of press freedom in India has just gone so dramatically down during Modi. I am not new to powerful people not answering, but I'm definitely new to there being such a backlash in just the attempt of trying, you know? Donald Trump, I called out to him multiple times in the White House.
I also saw your interviews on the mainstream news channels of India, where you were grilled a lot. Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Just a few days ago, you saw the Norwegian correspondent showdown. What happened? Helle Lyng was that one correspondent who asked Prime Minister Modi the question which most of the media in India never ask. She asked Prime Minister Modi that, will you answer the questions of the freest press in the world? Prime Minister Modi chose not to answer. He walked out. Then there were clips which went viral of the correspondent whose name is Helle Lyng. And then she was trolled on the media. She was maligned. Her personal details were put out. And after that, her Instagram and X account was also blocked. But what is the general scenario in Norway? What is the impression now she has about the Indian press? We'll talk about all this, and Helle joins us from Oslo, and she's got many assignments now coming up her way, and she was really in a hurry, and she found time for us to talk to the Federal. Thank you so much, Helle, once again for joining, and it's a great pleasure having you on the Federal. And my first question, of course, to you would be that did you expect this sort of a moment would give you this kind of a limelight? And have you questioned other state of heads like this? Like the same manner in which you called out to Prime Minister Modi, have you called out to other state heads as well?
Yes. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I think to your question, I have had other interactions with other heads of states. For example, Donald Trump, I called out to him multiple times in the White House, but that's also a little bit more of a different scenario because he does take questions and he does open that floor. Sometimes he opens that floor for 40 minutes. So it was a little bit different. And I also tried calling out a question to Joe Biden when I was there in the White House covering Jens Stoltenberg's visit there back in 2024. So I'm not new to doing this, but it's definitely different with a leader.
Were you new to this attitude where you called out to Prime Minister Modi and he walked away without answering?
Well, I am not new to powerful people not answering, but I'm definitely new to there being such a backlash in just the attempt of trying, you know? That's kind of new to me.
No, but have you ever faced this kind of a backlash before for questioning a state head earlier?
No, I don't think there's anything like this. that could compare to this in my career.
No, but did you expect that, social media platforms like Insta and Meta would take down your accounts? And were you expecting that this could happen?
No, never in a million years could I expect this. I think it's interesting. I keep thinking about why this incident went viral in India, and I think it's because it it struck something, like there's something here that hasn't been that much talked about, and that both sides, the people that get mad, and the people that are starving for more critical questions to their most powerful leader is also elevating. So I think it's one of those things where all sides of and all perspectives of the Indian population that have access to the clip, of course, have their own take.
I also saw your interviews on the mainstream news channels of India, where you were grilled a lot after facing all the backlash. What was that experience like?
To me, it was a little bit surrealistic because they wanted interviews with me, and I wanted to do as many as possible. Also with people that are critical, I think that's okay. But to be grilled continuously for like 20 minutes by people that could be grilling the politicians of their own country instead, and actually make lasting changes for their audiences. For them to do that towards just a small town journalist in Norway, it was a little bit surrealistic. I would have been fine with having a few critical questions. Of course, it's okay to criticize the method. I know it's different from what you're used to in India, but still, just like there was just a constant, and also it was more like they're criticizing me for asking a critical questions, and they were also trying to criticize me for taking a side, which I didn't do, but then the same time taking a side very openly and just going at it.
The style which you adopted, I wouldn't say was new, because there was a time when we all were on the field and we used to ask such
yes,
questions.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
We used to chase the ministers with a mic, and the way you chased Prime Minister Modi up to the elevator. I saw that clip as well. But what is the kind of impression you have about the Indian media?
Thank you for highlighting that. You're right that because that's also one thing I saw last week, that like the fall of press freedom in India has just gone so dramatically down during Modi. It hasn't always been like that, and that's a very important thing to highlight too. And that also could be possibility to get back some more critical journalism. So I hope I started some conversations about that.
But what do you feel in general about the critical journalism? Is it really dying a slow death across the world? It's just not about India, but about other countries as well. What is your experience?
I do think journalism is under attack in many countries, also Western countries as well. And right now we're looking at United States too, and seeing how the judicial system is used to try to target individual organizations. So it's not like, and there's things to criticize here too, but I think in India, it's just so much more critical because the people that have access to Modi won't ask those type of questions. I don't know if they even can, without fearing for their safety. And the people, there are plenty of good journalists trying to still do this, but they're also really working under tough conditions, not having the access they need. And also on the ground, it can be very difficult to just report on things in local communities without facing a backlash.
I'll come back to that experience, when you called out to Prime Minister Modi. Now, because I wasn't there, I presume that was a
wish you were.
No, I'm saying that I'm assuming that there was a packed room. You called out to Prime Minister Modi, but couldn't that have been a possibility that he wouldn't have heard you? Because he was with the delegates, maybe he was busy also listening to what those people were saying. So would you want to give that benefit of doubt to Prime Minister Modi?
No, because then he can just say it, you know? And I know he saw me because we had eye contact when I also tried to approach him in the elevator. So, and I'm pretty sure he heard me because I have a
So
really loud voice.
you're saying that you did have an eye contact with Prime Minister Modi?
Yeah, and when he was standing in the elevator. So I know that he acknowledged, well, he didn't acknowledge it in his words, but I know that he knew that something was up. And I'm pretty sure he heard me. To me, it's kind of a wild question because if you
No,
were
but
there,
when you were in the elevator, you said that you had an eye contact with Prime Minister Modi in the elevator.
Yes.
At that time, you didn't shoot a question to him?
I tried to ask him a new question too, yeah, about trust. If you see that clip, you see,
Right,
but
right.
the door is
But then the
closing,
elevator
so
closes.
yeah, so I don't get
Yes.
to finish my question. But if you also pause that video, you can see his face is looking at me, you know.
Right,
So
right.
I know within that situation that my question was heard. So the only thing I can say, because that's not a big room and I have a loud voice, so those two things, and everyone else was quiet. So I know that if the only thing I can say is that if there's a hearing problem, that I can't account for, but that I don't know of, you know? And I think Prime Minister Modi, if he didn't hear me, he can come out and say it. But I don't think he'll do that either.
No, but there were, I'm sure, other journalists as well. Did no other journalist pose a question to Prime Minister Modi the way you did?
No.
No, but your country is on the number one spot as far as the press freedom index is concerned. And were you the only one who was reporting that day? There weren't other
There are
reporters.
many. This is a very good question, and I honestly, I've said that to other news organizations. I wish that some of the journalists, also probably someone that have worked closer to Asia and have more region experience, could have asked some questions or tried to raise their voice.
No,
The
but
second,
you did have other journalists from Norway also, right?
yes.
But they didn't ask a question.
No, and I wish they did. But to me, I think it's one of those things where sometimes, as well in Norway, this happens too. That you don't question the premise of this, and especially with foreign leaders, I think we're better at pressing our own politicians in our country. But then when some foreign leader comes, like the Prime Minister of India, maybe we see just ourselves and we're just following the program like it was being laid out, you know. And that's why I wanted to question the premise of it too, because I don't think any foreign leader can come and just have talking points when you're in that much power, you know.
But a lot of journalists who have trolled you have said, and in fact, many news anchors in India said that you were looking for that limelight moment, and nobody knew who you were, and they were trying to. That's the reason why they were grilling you, and they said that you were indulging in some sort of a showboating, and you were trying to acquire a claim. Those were the kind of allegations which were put for you, that why did she ask a question to Prime Minister, and why did she and then she put out a clip as well. That intention of putting out the clip is very, very questionable.
Oh, you think so? For me,
I'm saying back home in India, people have been questioning your intent.
Oh, yeah. Of course,
Why you
and
put that clip.
that's okay with me. For me, it's not about me. It was never about me. I didn't put myself in the video when I posted it. I just posted the clip of the Prime Minister, and I did post it on X because I wanted to reach the Indian audience and have a discussion, and that I stand by completely. I'm usually more on TikTok because that's where the youth of Norway is now, but I know that that's not an option in India at this moment. So that's why I posted it on X, and I did. And I think it's important to really, this we can discuss, because I didn't make the story about me. I was trying to raise the questions of press freedom. And it was the Indian media and also the same people that are calling me a nobody and trying to criticize me for using this moment to raise press freedom, awareness of press freedom. It's those same type of people that do that
But if you were allowed that moment where you asked that question to Prime Minister Modi, what is the kind of question you would have asked him? Because you just said that will Prime Minister Modi not answer the questions of the freest press of the world? After that, he went away. But had you allowed, if you had been allowed that moment, what was the question you had in mind to ask him?
Well, first, I would have just kept on that subject. So I would just ask him, why do you not hold press conferences in India? Why don't you take critical questions from journalists, from independent organizations, or, the bigger media outlets that are still committed to truthful reporting? That would have been probably the subject I would have stick to. And now it's also a little bit difficult to think back to that because now I know so much more about India than just a week ago. So now I have a lot of other questions in mind. But I think for me, the only contribution I can have that would be impactful is try to direct towards the great reporters and journalists of India, because you are there with the knowledge about India, the history, the religion, the different cultures and minority groups in your country. So for me, the only important impact I could have was to try to get you guys more in front of your prime minister so that you can do your work in a better working environment.
No,
I
but
don't think,
the
yeah.
second, the media briefing for which you went, where the Ministry of External Affairs officer Shibi George had briefed the press. Now, there also you asked a question that why should we trust India? Now, what was the context? Because I'm sure anybody would feel offended when you ask the officer of that country that why should we trust India? Was it a very in the face, a direct question, and to which he gave a roundabout answer for which again he got trolled? And he assumed that apparently you did not have a knowledge of the Indian civilization, and which is why he recounted that entire story.
And that's his choice to do that. To me, when I look back at that question about trust, I wanted to think about it in a very big frame that Norway and the other Nordic countries, by the last week, the state visit and all the Nordic countries coming together in Norway, we are helping him, the Prime Minister of India, elevating his position on the world stage. He is taking an even bigger spot now, So that's why I wanted to raise the awareness of trust, because we're standing behind you. Can we trust that you will take the very important and alarming situations going on in India seriously and actually hold yourself accountable? Will you make changes? Or is there
No,
anything the government
that
can
was
do?
that was a very natural question on the part of any true journalist, because and you were wanting to know that if my country is having a strategic partnership with India, how will they protect the human rights violation? But uh, it seemed that you were not satisfied with the answer given by Shibi George, and the clip which went viral showed that apparently you stormed out of the room. Did you actually storm out in anger, or was it some other reason?
I think it's so funny. I was obviously, to me, CB George was done answering my question because I tried to press him. I tried to interrupt him, get him to redirect his question, redirect back to what I was trying to discuss. And it'd been minutes. And to me, he was on to something else, because they collected all the questions at the same time, and they were just doing the questions all together answers. And then to me,
So you got irritated. You got irritated because you didn't get your direct, pinpointed answer.
no, so the thing is, I walked out to get water and I came back
Oh,
into the room 30 to 40 seconds after. I just went outside. The water machine was just outside. I'd used it beforehand too, I think. And I took some water, and you know how they work. You just put some water in, and then I got security to lock me right back in again to the room. And so to me, that was kind of crazy to see some of the members of the press too try to frame it as like I left the room and never came back, because I'm sure they have the clip of me.
that's what the impression went.
Yeah, I'm sure they have the clip of me coming right back in. And actually, I'll try to find it too, because I haven't had time to look for it. But
Right.
They could have been honest about that in their reporting, but instead they wanted to scandalize me. And you know what? I don't think the Indian youth, they didn't buy that, you know? And the Indian youth are much more worried about the dire situation of democracy in their country than to try to scandalize a Norwegian reporter. Well, I'm a commentator now, but a Norwegian journalist, you know? So to me, that was just a crazy situation.
Right, but what was that experience when they put out your personal details? They called you a Chinese spy as well, and they said that you were funded by George Soros, and that's the kind of narrative which came out as far as your personal details were concerned. What was that?
I was just so
Especially
surprised
when
that
you answered questions on those things, when you were grilled on those points.
I was just so surprised that any media personality, I don't call those people, if you're in the media and spreading this, I don't know if you can qualify as a journalist because you've done minimal research to back up your claim, because you can't, this is unprovable. Like, I went to a morning show yesterday with my boss here in Norway to just talk about it. And I was like, well, thankfully my old boss, because it was my old boss, he's here, my old editor, and he can confirm that I'm not a Chinese spy, you know? But to me, there's done zero research on this. They have no proof, no evidence, and they wouldn't find anything because I'm literally just a small town journalist from Norway, working in Oslo, a bigger city, and trying to do some good work and tried to be critical of those that need criticism, or at least those that need critical questions.
No, but as far as the Norwegian press is concerned, now you are more acclaimed. More people now know you because of this question which you try to ask Prime Minister Modi.
I have no clue because I haven't had any time to be in those circles this week because I've just been talking to mostly Indian journalists. I've had probably around 30 to 40 interviews.
You haven't been interviewed by anybody in Norway so far.
Oh yes, I have, but I haven't, like, we haven't spoken about how this affected me. In Norway we actually kind of focused on the topic, you know, and but also we focused on our role here and why I did what I did. That's kind of what we've been focusing on here. So I haven't, like, I don't think too much. Like this week, I'm putting a line to it today that, like, now I have to go back to my work. Tomorrow I'm going to be writing hopefully about labor strikes in Norway, and also grocery prices are high here. We have a lot of other issues that I'll be doing critical reporting about here in Norway.
For last 1 week, you were saying you haven't had the time to report on any particular issue except for giving
I did one. Because my responsibility, which I'm still tapping into in Norway, are the strikes. That's one of my key cover areas, and there's a big strike in the hotel industry that I'm following up. So on Friday, I did have to be like, okay, I gotta step out of India for a second and go to the strike and talk to the people that are now striking again. And there's, well, we could talk about this for hours too, but there's two organizations that are trying to figure out who should be responsible for sick leave before the government refunds a worker. It's such a, like, it's a very heated discussion here in Norway right now.
Right. But what about, what is the impression you have about the Indian media? Is it like almost like it has this tendency become normal that you can't be asking direct and pinpointed questions to the powers that be, and that tendency is increasingly getting clearer and clearer that you can't, and people feel offended if you ask direct questions. What is the kind of impression you've had of Indian media so far? You've been to various channels, you've given interviews, the way you were grilled. By and large, what is your impression about the Indian media?
I think it's so two-sided because I've talked to so many great independent journalists, and also journalists working for networks like The Wire and also your HV English. And I just think that that's one side of it. And I think that's also what I hope the attention I can now maybe help put the attention towards the journalists and reporters in India that are doing the heavy lifting in harsh conditions. That's what I'm hoping this will go. And then I've also seen, of course, the media that I know some people refer to as the Godi Media. And yeah.
So you are aware of this term, Godi Media?
Yeah, I heard of it also before everything happened, but now, of course, having been on their networks, I know a
So
lot
who
more.
told you? Did anybody tell you about Godi Media, or you read that phrase?
Read about it when I was doing research last week, and I read about press freedom. That was a term that came up, but of
Okay.
course, I never would have. I don't think you can understand it before you experience the way I do. I might write about it one day when all of this calms down, because then I have not been able to process exactly my experience with that type of biased media in favor of government. I've never experienced anything like it before. So to me, that was probably one of the most interesting things. But I'm also, you know what, weirdly, I'm kind of grateful to been on there, because they probably have a lot of viewers that never thought about press freedom before, in that sense, or like maybe haven't really noticed what had happened in India the last few years. So to me, I've been like maybe one or two, or hopefully 10, 20 people that was watching, that was like, okay, this young lady here on the other side of the planet, that she says something interesting about press freedom in India. Maybe I should start following other journalists as well and get a more balanced perspective on my current government.
So you feel proud of the fact that you could initiate this discourse about press freedom in India, and the entire, even the Godi media, as you say, and we call it a legacy media or a mainstream media. So the mainstream media could take up the issue of press freedom. So is that a sense of achievement for you?
Yeah, I think I'm proud of you're not allowed to be proud of yourself anymore, but after this week and that have been gone by, I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of the work I did. I stand by it 100%. I would not do it differently.
So now, with all your experience with the Indian press, by giving interviews, you would want to visit any of the newsrooms and want to see and interact with the people and the journalists here?
Oh yes, of course. I want to learn more, and I am wanting to explore if there's any more value I could add. But I think for now, I'm very comfortable taking a back seat again, you know, and following. Maybe I'll retweet some good work I see in the future. Your channel as well. You have a lot of good discussions and debates. So I think that's where now that I'm leaving India
Oh,
to
so you say that if given an opportunity, at least immediately you would not want to come to India?
Oh, I would love to come to India, but for me, I would have to. There's so much now that I wouldn't have to do a week ago. I would have to make sure that I have safety, and that I would also have to talk to the Norwegian embassy in India to make sure that they think it's a good idea. Or what are the worries? I don't know. I don't think my mom would be too happy about it right now, but I hope one day in the future, you know. I will definitely, no matter what I do, I will come to India at some point in my life.
All right, it was wonderful having you on the program, Helle, and more power to you, and uphold the
More power
spirit
to
of.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much.